Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Media exists to promote a value system, and that's not done only by what they put on the screen, but also by what they don't put on the screen. Now, the reason for this morning's briefing is because I noticed people's avatars, screen names, and such. A lot of black folks happen to be into quote-unquote geek culture. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to need to make sure that you never forget the true nature of the people who make the content that so many of you enjoy. Matthew Vaughan is a big-time Hollywood director, and he was in the running to direct one of the X-Men films, The Last Stand, but apparently he decided to bow out of it, and he explained why that was. He said that he had met with the producers of the movie, and that they had told him that they had lied to Halle Berry in order to get her to sign on for the third X-Men movie. According to Matthew Vaughan, the producers told him that they had agreed to one of Halle Berry's requests, which was that there should be a scene in the movie where Halle Berry, playing the part of Storm, goes to Africa and you got some children in Africa who are starving or whatever, or they're in a drought in the desert, and she causes it to rain, which in effect helps to save these children. Now, according to Matthew Vaughan, the producers said to him that they told Halle Berry they agreed to her request, and they even went so far as to have a fake script written so that they could show it to her and say, see, it's in the script, we're going to go ahead and shoot this now that you've signed on. But once she signed on the contract, they had absolutely no intention of actually filming those scenes, and indeed, they didn't. Now, Matthew Vaughan said that after he learned from these producers that they had written a fake script and they had lied to Halle Berry just to trick her into signing on for that third X-Men movie, he decided after that he was not going to make that X-Men movie. He moved on to something else, and 20th Century Fox wound up having to get the guy who made Rush Hour to direct it instead. And yes, this is exactly like Dave Chappelle's infamous story about how the studio reps lied to him in an attempt to coerce him into doing a cross-dressing scene in a movie. They claimed that this was the only form of the script that the studio would accept, so Chappelle had to do it. Chappelle continued to refuse, and they continued to harangue and browbeat him about it, until he eventually put his foot down and said, the conversation's over, I'm not doing it. And then they brought out a different version of the same script, one that didn't have the cross-dressing scene in it. So they had been lying to him from the very beginning. This isn't about making the best entertainment. This is about them getting their jollies by reinforcing anti-black themes, narratives, and tropes. But I was curious about something. See, Matthew Vaughan may not have directed the third X-Men movie, but he did direct another X-Men movie, X-Men First Class. And in that movie, there was only one black character in the whole film, and he winds up getting killed. So think about that before you nominate this Vaughan person for sainthood. As Dr. John Henrik Clarke relentlessly taught us, we have no friends. Time and again, we see certain racist white guys who can't compete against black people in sports, academics, or the arts. Instead, they try to find some way to be on the periphery of those arenas, but in a way that allows them to whip us with a pen. You got some racist who can't make the football or basketball team because his black competitors are simply outperforming him. They're working harder and trying harder. So instead, he decides that he's going to become a sports reporter and spew anti-black racism under the guise of sports commentary. Everyone knows what he's doing, and that's the reason that he does it. Or you got some racist who thought that they were going to bark out orders when they were in school, and they get checked by black students. And then afterwards, they decide that they want to join the police department. Remember, Kyle Rittenhouse got his butt stomped by black students when he and some friends jumped a white female classmate. And next thing you know, Rittenhouse is running around with an assault rifle talking about how he wants to join the police department. Racists who can't compete against us in entertainment go on to become media critics or white media executives, and they then push scripts and TV shows and imagery meant to degrade and defame us. Even if you do find a TV show or movie you think to be entertaining, don't ever let yourself become so engrossed in it that you think the people who made it are your friends. They are not. My question is, why? And this is not to say that we should be crying tears for Halle Berry. If this story is indeed genuine, I want to know why we didn't hear about it from her. X-Men 3 was made 20 years ago. Why didn't she say anything about it then? Or 10 years ago? Or 5? Why do we have to wait until this guy decides to talk about it? Because this is how black people in Tinseltown deal with the daily humiliation of working in an industry run by racists. They just try not to think about it. They tuck it away, and I'm sure they tell themselves that they're simply not letting the racists get to them. But in reality, they're contributing to a conspiracy of silence that allows these racists to operate with impunity. But these black actors will never stand up to these bigots, same way black athletes don't. They're all looking for money from these white media companies, but more than that, they're looking for approval from these white media executives. And for most of them, that white approval means more than a paycheck. And I would imagine that a number of you probably have dabbled with the idea of trying your hand at breaking into entertainment, or perhaps you've already tried. If you got stars in your eyes, you need to understand what the white media is really about. Now, I've actually watched a few of these comic book movies, and one thing I've noticed is that they don't have any movies that show black characters with superpowers. I mean real ones, something spectacular. It's usually that they're the sidekick like Captain America's friend, the Falcon, but they don't fly on their own, and they don't shoot energy beams at people, no super strength or anything like that. They reserve that for the white characters. This is meant as a form of image training, to brainwash people through repetitive images. And no matter how black people in Hollywood try to put a pretty face on it, that doesn't change what it is. The main ones who have bought into the lies the white media tells are the black people who want to work in Hollywood. Paul Mooney talked about that, how subservient and often sniveling these black celebrities are willing to be, and how he couldn't stand it. These Negroes in Hollywood have convinced themselves that they're on the inside looking out, while we are on the outside looking in. And you know what? They're right. They are on the inside of a prison. They've chosen to be the white media's prisoners, and like a convict in a cage, they're inside white supremacy's penitentiary looking out at us. The white media gave them a few creature comforts, but in return, it demands that they surrender their self-respect and their dignity, just like the black athletes do. And even the ones who don't get caked off are still only too eager to sell their souls. Only someone who draws their meaning in life from being close to their oppressors can do this. The reason they never try to build something on their own or to get away from massa is because they don't want to. Now, whenever I talk about sports or entertainment, I always get the same handful of the same lame brains who whine, "But Professor, why you always going off about sports and entertainment when you don't really watch stuff like that?" Well, here's the reason why. It's because I know you watch it. And that being the case, I have to be attentive to it as well. I want to make sure that you can't fully immerse yourself in their dream worlds, because these white media fantasies are distractions at best and mental pollution at worst. Either way, it came from your enemy, and that alone means I can't just let you watch their stuff and act like there's no harm in it. You can't afford to turn your brain off and just consume the stuff coming from the white media. So-called entertainment actually serves a very important purpose under white supremacy. It teaches racial roles. It teaches people in the society that white people are the stars of the show, and black people are at best sidekicks. That our job is to do whatever white power says and to obey their every order. Look at those Marvel movies. Samuel Jackson is supposed to be the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. He put the band together, but they spend all their time following Captain America or Tony Stark's orders. And what does that teach people who watch these movies? You have a black man who's supposed to be in charge, but nobody follows him. That's what it teaches. So no, the so-called entertainment that you watch is not harmless. It indoctrinates people because, as Paul Mooney said, people believe what they see. And when they see a dramatic reinforcement of racial roles, they will believe it. I want material that shows us as what we are: leaders, trendsetters, risk takers. In the real world, everyone takes their cues from us. We are not the cutting edge of society. We are the bleeding edge of it. We are the zeitgeist. We are the pulse. We are the ones who people look to for trends and ideas. That's how it is in the real world. So why is it then that when we look at entertainment, we see exactly the opposite? The white media took the wallflowers and the people who sit back being passive and instead presents them as being the center of attention. And they're the ones who come up with things, and they're the ones who people look to when the opposite is true. And they took the people who show hustle every day and have reduced them to nothing more than yes men for the wallflowers. That's brainwashing. It's mental genocide. And these are the highest grossing, most successful movies in human history. No form of media has been as outrageously successful as these comic book movies. But look at what they're showing. And as this latest story with Matthew Vaughan shows, look at what the people who make these comic book movies actually believe. And it's not a surprise that they use comic book movies to do it. Malcolm X himself specifically talked about that. How the white media tries to trick you into believing that you live in a society that isn't trying to destroy you and will use every means of its media to do it, everything from TV shows to comic books. They put out a few movies or TV dramas and sitcoms with a couple of black folks in them, and they try to con you into thinking that they don't have it in for you. And some black folks have actually fallen for it. Halle Berry will never put her foot down when it comes to the white media, but we, the black grassroots, we had better do so on our own behalf. Because no matter what these white media companies or the black people who they have on their payroll may try to tell you, when it comes to the white media, it's not just a movie. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Morris Bodden, Naomi Hafis, Nigel Davis, Mark Stroud, and Philip Walker. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.